I am still muted. Okay, there we go. All right, yo, what's going on, YouTube? Today we have a very interesting stream. Yes, I am late. I apologize. Hunky, welcome to the stream. Bullets, hello. Gronos, Artha, Ergendir, and Ray, welcome to the stream. So today I am joined by Brian Koo of Kingdom 1770. We are in the same KVK. And I was literally adjusting some audio things, and Brian hit me up and was like, yo, I see you're about to stream and I kind of want to come on and talk about some stuff, I guess, as opposed to making a video. Right, Bryce? So, Brian, welcome.
Yeah. Hey, Dan, thanks for having me. Yep. Good description of my point of view and how this all unfolded. Hopefully I sound good.
Yeah, chat, just let us know. So I know I've been having mic issues lately, so I was going in and kind of redoing everything. Me and Brian also took like 15-20 minutes because I am not tech savvy and trying to figure out the audio set options for him as well. So just let us know if Brian is a little bit too low or if I'm too high or whatever it may be. Yeah, Brian, it's been an interesting last 24 hours. I think it took approximately probably like around 12 to 14 hours for matchups and allies to be announced. So I guess I'll just talk from a 2975 perspective real quick. So I've obviously woke up and I've been kind of like trying to monitor this, and I knew it was taking a little bit longer than usual until probably around this is 21 hours ago actually. So
I think it took a day and a half, right?
Yeah.
Do I have that right? Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, because I honestly, even last night too, I was like, oh crap, Marauders. When I woke up this morning, I was like, Marauders have spawned. Brian has a little echo. All right, we'll see if we can fix that up over OBS. Let me know if it's too much. Skitty, welcome to the stream. Yeah, it's all credit to Brian, honestly. Without him, it would just be me here blabbering about stuff that I probably don't even really know. But Brian is in 1770 leadership. Not much to do in the Diplo, as he was kind of telling me. But yeah, I got this message in one of our chats and then also in an alliance marker, which I can't find anymore, saying what the allies were. So as you can see, Earth, Water, and Camp Greenwood. So for those who are like, well, what are these guys talking about? I will show you right now. So these are the kingdoms that are involved, and this was the map layout. So Earth being with 2975 and 3105 in my kingdom, 2268 with the content creator kingdom, in Fire Camp, Brian and Wind in 1770. I believe Lefty the Spartan is also in this KVK, as well as I feel like there's one other person in a random kingdom, but I can't remember just yet. But yeah, it was looking
Scotty, the leader of 1824, also has a YouTube channel, although he hasn't made too many videos.
Okay. So yeah, this was looking to be a very fun KVK when it came to content creators. Although now with the matchups, from what it looks like, is it would be Dirty Dan versus all the content creators. Shit, that's not fair.
Yeah, that's not fair for us, man. Content creators always lose.
So I also got some insight today before I let kind of Brian jump in, and so the pretty much the whole thing to this, and obviously to the thumbnail, is 2268 pretty much saying, okay, well, we're not going to fight because 2975 and 2748, which is in Camp Greenwood, they already had a pre-agreement that they were going to ally, so we aren't going to fight. Have fun, Wind, and Daybreak, I guess, right? Is that what it would be?
Yeah, Wind. Yeah, Wind, pretty much.
Wind.
I mean, that was the vibe at a certain point. I think the vibe is shifting a little bit, but that was. I'll be honest. When I woke up today, that was also my reaction was the same as 2268. The first thing I wrote in leadership chat when I realized that, we were, in our opinion, very big underdogs, and our leader Adinava wanted to go really hard. My first thing I said was, yeah, that's going to be a no for me, dog. Cringe hard pass. Don't want to be a huge underdog in yet another KVK just like sick of it, because we basically are now underdogs in like 4 straight KVKs, and you just kind of get sick of it after a while.
Of course.
But I think the mood is shifting a little bit.
Okay, so you do think that we will get some fighting, and we'll,
Yeah, I think we're going to get a lot of fighting in the KVK. I do think so. I don't think it's giving away too much to say that one of the big whales from our kingdom, White Castle, spoke with one of the big whales from 2268 Peacemaker, and they had like a good conversation, and they just were like, "Are you going to fight?" Heck yeah, I'm gonna fight. Okay, I'm gonna fight too. And they were just, they're just two guys who have nothing to do with Diplo, but who like to play this game. And they were like, "Oh, we're gonna fight. Like, we're gonna fight."
Okay.
It's unfair. The other team pre-allied. The other team wants an easy win, but we're gonna fight anyway.
Yeah, I mean, so just speaking on like the, allying up. So this is my second KVK in 2975, and it's just I'm not super familiar with Vietnamese kingdoms, to be honest. From what I know, though, obviously just from playing this game for like 5-6 years now, is that Asian kingdoms definitely do like to stick together. But I've noticed since I've been in 2975, like these guys hard lock when it's like other Vietnamese ran kingdoms that are within the same KVK with them. So I can attest to why that is. Obviously there's commonality, same time zones and all that stuff. But that hard locking on allies definitely, turned some people the wrong way, which is why I think we kind of got to the point in how and how kind of toxic things were getting, especially when it came to like Facebook and whatnot.
Oh, you just cut out on me.
Oh, what was the last part you caught?
You were just saying especially as things got toxic.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. I mean, I kind of understand the hard lock on the allies from 2975, and just being here and just seeing what they did last KVK. Would I say that 2975 is probably looking for an easier KVK? I honestly don't know if that's the reason that they chose Greenwood. I honestly I really hardly believe that it's because it's and also too, as Skitty's mentioning in chat, that Pha just has an account in 2748, so he wants to ally both of his accounts, which is very similar to what we see from Arvix too. Arvix and Pha, they actually.
I will say, if I can just jump in for 1 second, I did hear that Pha is planning to migrate out his 2748 account before this KVK starts.
Okay.
And yeah.
I mean, go ahead.
Well, just to jump in on one thing you said about whether 2975 wanted an easy KVK or not, I think it's, from my point of view, it is objectively true that 2975, your kingdom, did want an easy KVK. They essentially said as much. They said we did no skips, we didn't we didn't have time to get speed ups and resources. Their allies 2748 was also didn't say much in Diplo, but apparently their main thing was like 2975 is weak because they haven't had time to recover. And these are the two biggest kingdoms. Like, these are the two kingdoms with 900 billion plus kill points saying this. So from my point of view, one thing that did happen here, many things happened here. The toxicity you mentioned is another factor, but one factor here is that 2975, more than anybody else, they wanted an easy KVK, and that's what they got.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a fair amount of screenshots and other things that are floating around there. So yeah, I did see that 2975 was pretty much saying like, yes, we jumped right in, we didn't skip, we didn't kind of recover and all that stuff. The one thing I just want to point out and keep in mind for everyone, and I know from everything that I saw, the domain thing is something that we all have to get used to, right? The domain thing is one of the I think one of the more confusing aspects. Not confusing, but it causes a lot more complexity when it comes to Diplo discussions, because are the domain powers accurate, etc., etc. There was a lot of that talk going back and forth. we are definitely a little in a weakened state from 2975 because we lost a large handful of players and we haven't really replaced anyone. So we're sitting, and then this discussion kind of came up too. Is, oh well, we have this many active players, we have this many. Yeah, I don't think anyone spoke up for 2975, but we are sitting at about probably around 100 as well. So
sorry, can you say that again? How many?
we're sitting around 100 active, I would say, roughly, and that's a rough count. We can kind of go in it too.
Okay.
But we're definitely not a full 150. That's for sure. And also, the king mentioned that 5 other pretty large players are going to leave on the 5th as well. So we're going to lose another 5 players.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, one thing I noticed on Facebook was that, like, you know, there's like this huge thread about it, and there were literally like 3 or 4 different visuals of like power, kill points, number of accounts. Like everyone had their own version of like the stats, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's super confusing, like, because I just naturally like assume that the stats that or the list that like my teammate made, I assume it's accurate, and then it's like you probably assume the same thing about yours, like the one that your teammate made is accurate too. And so it's kind of it is tough. I mean, I think so. Maybe some of these here. Let me send you one image. Just what I'm working. I'm just going to show you what I'm working from. Right.
Okay.
I'll just paste it in our Discord chat. I mean, I do think that like the two Vietnamese kingdoms like objectively have the most kill points by far, and the most like players over 100 million power. Right. 40 in 2975, 43 in 2748. And then none of the other really relevant kingdoms have more than 30, right?
Yeah.
And 2748 has 6 players above 200 million power, whereas no one else has even 3. You know, so yeah, there is like a lot of stats going around. And I just to ground it a little bit more from my point of view, you know, 2975 and 2748, they approached us very early on and said, "Do you want to ally with us?" Which would essentially be the 3 like strongest camps allying with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we turned that down because that was like an unfair, like that would just be like a total farm KVK, totally unfair, super easy win. We turned that down. And ultimately what happened was a version of that where like instead of us being that 3rd camp, because we turned it down, Water was the 3rd camp instead, because Water accepted that, you know, advantageous matchup. So, but I mean, yeah, sorry, I shouldn't like jump in too much, Dan, because I honestly think like you're like much better off like leading this and like taking it where you want to go, because
no,
I think you're more like, I think you're just like more like less biased about it, and like I do appreciate like right off the bat you were kind of like, you gave context that 2975 doesn't have as many active players as we think, but at the same time you also said that yeah, maybe it is true that 2975 pre-allied, et cetera, right? So it's like yeah, I mean, like that's
it's totally fine. Like that's why, I mean, even when we both like kind of agreed to do it, I'm like, I was there like cooking my food, and I was like, I wonder what he's going to talk about. I was like, we did he could come on and just totally shred 2975. But yeah, I mean, it's total just transparency and whatnot. So like, I honestly, look, there's things that I think that from a 2975 perspective too, that they need to improve on, as I just realized that this thing is which I think they learned, because last KVK there was like 0 Diplo talks with certain camps, and again they hard locked and they were like, okay, we're going for this, and that's what ended up us having what was it, 1v14 in Kingsland. So they definitely learned, right? And they definitely, as from what I've seen in screenshots and other things, 2975 definitely became a little bit more vocal. But we're also very kind of like locked in their ways. It wasn't a lot of reasoning. It wasn't, you know, even the thought of like maybe considering things was just like, no, this is kind of what we want to do. There was a little bit here and there of like suggestions, some additional suggestions, but as I first looked at this matchup, the first thing that came to my mind, I think as I was going through the kingdoms was, I honestly did think 2975 Greenwood, and then I can't remember if it was your guys' camp. There was another camp that was
We're very strong.
predominantly.
I mean, wind is very strong. Yeah.
So this wasn't even based on powers. This was just like looking at like, you know, alliance board and like kind of like seeing what the power was listed on there, and like scrolling through the like the active members, and it just lined up that 2975 Camp Greenwood, and there was another camp that was predominantly Asian, and I was like, that just makes sense. Like, let's go in for once, and because 2975 hasn't really done this, but let's go in for once. Let's try and make the pass openings in our favor, and let's take that strategic approach. But again, that was all without knowing power, so I definitely could have been glancing over that third camp that was predominantly Asian and just not realizing. I also didn't even realize 2748 was that strong either. So in a perfect world, what do you think, or I guess from that leadership perspective and trying to not give away too much, but what would you think that the ideal matchup would have been here?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I appreciate that. I think that we proposed two very fair matchups. The first matchup, and the thing that the matchup that I think was best would be fire, wind, and Greenwood.
Fire, wind, Greenwood.
Which would mean that everyone got to fight in Zone 5. Everyone would have a 1v1 in Zone 5, right? Mm. And we would have the advantage on the bottom. Like, Wind and Greenwood would definitely have the advantage on the bottom against Daybreak and Water, but your team would have the advantage on top with Earth against Fire. Like, I think Earth is definitely has stronger than Fire at this point. Just based on like numbers, but also based on like some of the things that 2268's saying. Like, they're ready to fight, but they're like down. They have less mains than you guys do, right? Like, they have less than 100 active players right now.
But we can also come back and make the argument that we have 3105 in our camp, which is arguably, obviously, the newest kingdom. Less developed accounts, obviously for SOC, I should say. While 1394 with the Imperium tag, as I do air quotes, that they're not really Imperium. I mean, let's be real, but they have two full-ish alliances from what I saw. So they have the population, and 2268 still has some whales to also throw down with 2975 and what we have with our newer campmate. So I think that fight honestly is a lot more even than people are taking for granted.
Yeah. And so like that matchup was rejected. From my information, that matchup was rejected privately by your kingdom. They told Greenwood that they would not accept that matchup.
Okay.
And then the other thing that we propose that I think is also fair is left versus right, right? Like the left side versus the right side. Where you and I would then be teamed up. We would be teamed up with Earth.
Yep.
Along with Water. And we would have the edge. Well, wait. Yeah, we did propose that one. That one honestly seems like very strong for our side, but I mean, I guess it's not totally unfair, right? It's like it's a pretty reasonable matchup that we were certainly fine with, and I believe in that case. One sec. Let me see who who rejected that one.
I mean, I think
so. Your team essentially said that left versus right is okay, right?
Yes, okay. Which makes sense if we're coming from the perspective that 2975 is a little bit tired, and we probably don't want to fight in Zone 5. Or we're okay with not fighting in Zone 5.
Yeah, and I guess the left versus right just sort of broke the left versus right discussion, which I'm kind of disappointed that didn't happen. It just sort of broke down where like Fire and Water started arguing with each other. And I'm honestly not, like, I talked to our leadership a long time about this. I'm still not totally clear why left versus right broke down. I think that's like I think we're the favorites on our side is the favorites in that matchup. but like we're certainly less of a favorite than I think you guys are now. So I mean, I just think there were better. I just think there were better options than this, and it's a little bit hard to know what options were ever on the table. Like, was it ever really on the? Was left versus right ever really on the table, or was Greenwood and Earth always allied? Did their alliance never break? And like that just was never going to happen. It's hard for me to know that because A, I wasn't in Diplo, and B, Greenwood like almost never talked in Diplo. Like Greenwood really like said almost nothing in Diplo the whole time. So it's sort of hard to know if they would have accepted left versus right, for example, because then they would kind of be the underdog in that situation.
True. Yeah.
Or a Fire might not have accepted left versus right either. I honestly don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the left versus right seems okay, right? Because obviously you have Earth and Fire kind of matching up. Water versus Greenwood, or versus Greenwood, which would probably prove to be a little bit difficult. But then I mean,
it's good for Greenwood though. Like Greenwood gets to have a 1v1 where, quite frankly, I think they would have won.
Yes, yeah.
And like even if they lose the KVK, they win that 1v1. That's like a really like if you win a 1v1 against a well-known kingdom like 1824, then like is it that big of a deal if you like lose the KVK? You won the 1v1. You proved the strength of your kingdom. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But Skitty in chat is saying left versus right broke down because based on KP, mostly Daybreak and Fire are the weakest. Cannot team up the two weakest. Yeah. I mean, ultimately they're teamed up anyway. So it's like, I mean,
I mean, I've talked about this ad nauseum with my buddy Ray and a bunch of other people, and it's just like, I don't know. I just feel like Lilith isn't. This is a product of what I believe is there's not enough transparency when it comes to matchmaking. Because even when you go to the kill point breakdown, like I can tell you right now, in 2975 last KVK, when there was a lot of chasing, I should say, right? There was definitely, don't get me wrong, these guys can fight and they'll throw down and they spend, right? Let's not get that twisted, but there was a lot of chasing. Like I saw so many inflated scores from 2975, and I'll say that transparently. So like the whole kill point thing is like, it's very, it muddies things a lot. In my opinion, and this is also to like coming from the perspective of someone who's been in leadership, done the whole Diplo thing. The only thing that sticks out to me that I was thinking as I was kind of scrolling through some of these things is just like, what? Look, I understand that you can claim that 2975 and 2748 are the strongest, right? But based on the power chart that you sent me, they're not the we're not the strongest. But again,
I mean, they have the most KP and the most whales.
Yes,
like,
most,
I mean, yeah. and they're both former Osiris League champions. Like they have the most KP, they have the most KP, the most whales, and they're both former Osiris League champions. And they're talking about how they're like not strong and they're going to lose to like a kingdom that's going to break up after this KVK. I mean, 2268 is going to migrate out, and the Osiris League champions in your kingdom are like, oh, we can't beat 2268. Like. I just don't buy it, man. I don't buy it.
I don't buy the 2748 versus Fire, but let's just like real quick note, like we got bumped in the round of 16 by an opening sneaky tactics or like obelisk rally. We got knocked in the round of 16, so we're Sobek champions, which you just need some really big accounts for that. But 2748, yes. And the number of whales, like, yes, I understand, but you also have to look at look what we've had in the past when it's been 960 versus 1093, the first matchup. Like, numbers prevail at the end of the day, and if Fire Camp has more numbers than, but my point is, when I was kind of jumping into this is, look, if someone hardlocks on allies, I've never been in a Diplo decision before. Like, I think we teamed up with someone that we had just fought a KVK with, and we're like, yo, you want to ally? And we're like, yes. And that was like the first conversation when we first saw the map. I've never been in a Diplo discussion before, and I did roughly about 6 or 7 KVKs worth. That like, if you got hard picked onto an ally, like, so what? like that's that kingdom's choice. That's both of their choices, honestly. Would it be better to talk about it as a collective group? Yes, but one kingdom decision, another kingdom, like I just don't understand why there was that frustration to it to that extent. At the end of the day, if they're friends, if those kingdoms are friends and they generally have friends in leadership, of course it makes sense to ally with them. That's just the perspective and also just thought process. As I'm reading some of this, I'm just like, I don't understand why it's like it was from 2268, I should say specifically. It was just very like, oh my gosh, like they couldn't get their way. Is honestly how I was reading it. Which I was just like, all right, you got to chill out because you can't always have everything you want. But yeah, hopefully it all comes together and we can actually just kind of see where the dust settles and we can fight and then see where the dust settles. But hopefully we do get some fighting.
Yeah, I think we will. And one of the reasons I wanted to jump on the stream with you is just because I have a tendency to just like criticize everything and just like see the like, I just like be like, not really judge everything, but just like be negative about every single person along the way. And so, but I wanted to like have a more like, I wanted to find like a middle space where it's not all about like criticizing and judging people. And like you make a very good point about like what is so bad about two kingdoms like teaming up ahead of time, if they're friends and they want to play together.
Like they were probably in discussions as they were queuing. Like we were originally queued for Tides, and then last minute we switched to Invictus. So like again, I don't know what happened there, but those guys obviously with Fa having an account in 2748 and whatever it may be, but there's a connection there. So they were probably talking even before matchmaking landed, while we were all queuing. So this is that's another thing you gotta kind of unravel. Right.
I mean, like that's their perspective, but like think about it from our perspective, right? We just want we want a matchup where we can go into it and be like, we have a very good chance to win. And quite frankly, it makes me mad when kingdoms ally up, go into a war essentially knowing that they're going to win. Because we're just the product at that point. We're just like, we're gonna fight hard because like that's what you do in this game. You fight hard, and you guys are just gonna be the beneficiaries of it. Like you guys made a matchup that is very advantageous to your side, and now you're just gonna go into it all like stress free and just like pick up the win. It's fun to win. Like it's so much fun to win a battle in Rise of Kingdoms. It's much less fun to lose a battle in Rise of Kingdoms.
Yes.
And so you guys just your side. Okay, fine. You did like rational things for yourself and everything, but it's like it screws us over. It screws us over because we were getting ready for a very good KVK, a hard KVK, and it's like, for whatever reasons, that's not going to happen. And that just is very frustrating. And the best we can do, the best solution that we can find is to just fight hard anyway. And that just plays right into what you guys want. You guys want us to fight hard so that when it's over, you're like, oh, great job, 770. You guys are great warriors. While you're saying that while you're sitting in Kingsland, while you won the Zig, while you got the good trades, while the vibes in your kingdom are great because you A, had a good fight, and B, you won. And it's just like, I realized I'm kind of whining about this and playing my own spot, but it's just like I am kind of sick of these underdog situations over and over again. And ultimately, like, I just have to do the same thing that everyone else is doing, is like what's best for the people around me. Like, just like your guys are doing what's best for the people around you, I have to do the same thing. I just have to like fight hard. All my teammates want to fight. We're just going to go for it. This is fortunately like a map where like it's not really long and drawn out, right? Like it's a zone 4 fight or a zone 5 fight, which I don't even know if you guys are going to fight us. Like your players are in such a rest mode, or your leadership is in such a rest mindset that they might not even, they've said they've intimated that they might not even fight us in Zone 5. And then we do 3 days in Zone 6, and we see where things are at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like a super drawn out KVK. If it's close, it might end up being drawn out. And anyway, that's just where I'm coming from, like, emotionally about it.
Yeah.
And I think that is an aspect of this, but like I don't expect anyone else to care about my emotions.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's definitely tough, and I think Ray Ray asked probably the best question. I don't know if Brian's numbers are the ones that are the most accurate, but there was, like, Brian, I don't know, you said like 3 or different forms of numbers that everyone was provided. Just real quick, also Morningstar to my brother. Happy birthday, Vanessa. Hope you're doing well, Morningstar. So are these like what you believe to be the most accurate, I would say?
I mean, I think these are pretty accurate. These were gathered by Uni in our kingdom, and he's like a very smart dude, data-driven dude. And he's like, I have trouble thinking that Uni massaged these numbers in any sort of a manipulative way at all. I would be really surprised if these numbers were not pretty accurate. I mean, some of this KP is not in the main alliances. I mean, honestly, the most accurate thing to do would be literally just like say how much KP every main alliance has. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so like we have 537 KP in our main alliance, and what does this visual say? We have 637, right? So like there's 100 billion KP on like the list I gave you that is just like dead irrelevant KP in like on like dead weight accounts, Yeah,
we're at 935. And
okay, in your main you're at 935.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, I mean that's like a lot more than us, man. That's a lot more KP than we have. Now we do have a strong camp mate, so I think our camps are pretty even, but I mean we're like by far the strongest camp on our side at this point, whereas I don't think your camp is even the strongest. I think 2748 is probably stronger, so.
Yeah. I'm just going to browse real quick at 3105 because I honestly haven't given them a good look. I think this is the kingdom that Lefty is in. I saw him pop up in chat earlier. So if you're still watching, what's up, Lefty? Yeah, Lefty is he's in my camp. But yeah, it's a very, very young kingdom. 8.6 billion power for 3105. So
yeah.
And I'm looking here to lots of very small accounts. There's some big counts too, but let's see what chat says. Lefty says 2 alliance worth of dead weight. I saw up here too. Even Ray, because Ray's in 1093, and he said that this feels similar to him than to the situation that they were just in, I believe, if I'm not. He says kind of like the 960 489 camp, same camp, which doesn't make it a balanced KVK. Which I think there's going to be one side that's going to be a little bit weaker, like no matter what happens. I don't think that there was one way. As I was looking through this, and now I'm seeing the numbers and stuff a little bit more, and like seeing who the primary camp leaders are. I don't really know if there was a way to make this like super fair.
I think there were ways. I mean, if you look at if you look at anyone's visual, you're going to see 6 camps that have pretty similar KP and pretty similar numbers.
Just keep in mind too on this, as nice as the map is, right? Because you get the really nice 1v1 matchup. If you're if say your water camp, right? So it's right now with us, it's earth. Is it earth, greenwood, and water? Say it was instead earth, daybreak, and water. Water's screwed. Water's out of the KVK because they're gonna get sandwiched. I saw that time and time, and you can escape up into the daybreak side, right? Granted, they can hold. You can escape up there, but all that territory from Kingsland is essentially gone. So whatever side also, and I'm not saying this for 2975's purpose or for just in general, whoever would have gotten stuck with the alliance who's getting sandwiched in the zone 7, Now that side is at disadvantage. So although the map is nice, that zone 7 for the 4 camps is crazy. It's so hard to make that fair. It's really, the Daybreak and Wind are going to have the advantages because they don't have anyone on the other side of them.
So, I mean, Skitty in chat says, I don't think you can make it fair this KVK, but we can make it as fair as possible, which it isn't now. I think that's a good point. And I mean, again, I'll just list like 3. And Dan, I'm not going to. I don't want to go at you at all because I know you had nothing to do with this, right?
Yeah, go for it.
You know what I mean? So, and I very much appreciate you having me on where we can talk about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'll list 3 fairer matchups right at the top of my dome. Left versus right is fair. Fire, Wind, and Greenwood is fairer. And Fire, Wind, and Water is also fairer. Now, in the last minute after the allies were announced, I think there was a little bit of scrambling to try to make Fire, Wind, and Water happen.
But Water didn't want to, or someone didn't want to ally with 1824. I've seen that. There was.
First of all, at that point, the hostility between Fire and Water was so high that it wasn't going to happen.
Okay.
I think that, look, we would have preferred to fight 1824. Like we've been in. This is the 3rd straight KVK we've been in with 1824.
Oh shit.
And we want to fight them. All right. I'm not gonna lie. We wanted to fight these dudes, but we didn't close the door to allying with them. And we did officially propose one alliance that was with them, which again was left versus right. Like we were fine with left versus right, which would have us allying with Water,
Mm-hmm.
And so there were several matchups that were more fair than this, but they did not occur because, as we've talked about, again, I'm just going to say what I think.
2975 was hard locked, so you could say.
Yeah, they were 2975 was pre-allied and they wanted an easy KVK. And they've essentially said both of those things publicly, right? So now we're in the situation that we're in, right? And it's not only 27, it's not only on 2975 because again, Greenwood didn't say a friggin' word in Diplo, and Water is fine with an easy KVK. So and we, and Fire was difficult in various ways. I'm sure that we were difficult in various ways. There's plenty of it's something that happened. It's like,
yeah,
I'm trying to get out of the blame situation and just be like, this is something that happened because of a number of factors that are not that great. Like, I don't really it's not a good look for anybody, quite frankly.
Yeah. It's just even if someone just came, so if you're just walking in, kind of like how I was, but obviously I'm biased, but someone walking in unbiased and looking at all the Diplo stuff that I've seen, it would have just been like, man, these guys love to bitch at each other. Just a lot of finger pointing and a lot of I'm trying to protect my right and all this stuff. But we actually got a mail here. Hold on, let me see. Can I
go for it.
Let's see.
Do it. Yeah, I mean, I don't get invited to Diplo anymore because I've gone off the handle in the past. at a, there was a group that I felt was being very intellectually dishonest as they stole a star from us, and I just went off the handle on them one night and sort of I torpedoed any chance of a good resolution, right? And I think that maybe there were some kingdoms in this KVK where they haven't learned that lesson yet, where you have to remove the hotheads from Diplo, even if they're a main leader in the kingdom. If they're going to be counterproductive in Diplo, you just can't have them in there.
Yes.
Yeah, and I accept that. I you can see that I'm not that diplomatic.
Yeah,
so
yeah. You wear it on your sleeve. It's nothing wrong with
that.
Yeah.
I mean.
All right, I'll read this one out. I'm not gonna as I do this at times when I'm unsure. These guys are, I mean, as we've been talking, these guys are quite strong, and it's not like when I was in 2581 kind of running shit. So they could zero me at any time if they want to. So I tread lightly while I'm here. But this just came in from the king. and I skimmed through this, but I'll just read it off. Ally results is Earth, Water, and Greenwood, as we know. Currently in 2268, 1770, they posted a lot of false information about the diplomacy. They were the ones who eliminated the water camp to ally with 2748. Water camp was insulted by them, so allied with us. 486 plus 1770 is the strongest camp. They have 2 very strong kingdoms and many players. Power and kill points are high. 2268 plus 1394 is the second strongest camp. That's why Lilith put them in fire camp. That's not a bad point because we traditionally see
it's bullshit. It's complete bullshit.
But we do out of the last few, minus the 1093 one, but 1093 did beat 960, but still, you tend to see fire as the strongest camp. Whether that's like total power and KP and all that stuff. But again, this is where I think when you bring this up, this is where the domains really kind of like F things up a little bit and make it more complex than it needs to be. 2975, we never fight KVK easily. This KVK is the same. 2975 and 2748 are only high in kills, but have very little power in players, and we only get one more Kingdom CD. It will be very difficult for us. Don't believe any lies of the enemy, they are shameful. 2975 have a very difficult time in Pass 4 with Camp Wind and Pass 7 with Camp Fire. So, and that's it. Please prepare a lot of resources. We will fight continuously from Pass 4 to Kingsland. So it looks like we will not be taking off on Zone 5. So we'll see you there, I guess.
Nice. Yeah, I don't really know what to say about that statement, about that mail. Look, the thing is, in this game, the way that we normally evaluate power is we look at like the strongest camps or the strongest kingdoms in a camp. We look at their KP because everyone who plays this game in an advanced way understands that it's about who has the ability to really affect a war. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lot of KP that does not matter, but the KP that matters is the KP that is in the main alliance that has worked together in the past, knows how to work together well. That's what matters. Like, that's how all of these KVKs have been getting evaluated for years now. When we evaluate who is the favorite of these KVKs, we look at the main alliances and how strong they are. And I just think that like what they're arguing in that mail and what you guys are arguing in general is like, no, let's consider this. Let's think about this differently. Let's look at like overall power of a camp and be like, oh, 1394 has 2 alliances, so therefore like they're strong. I mean, literally like what that mail is the king of the camp with the most power and the most whales saying that they are at most the 3rd strongest camp. They're saying that we're stronger, and they're saying that Fire Camp is stronger, and that's why they took this matchup. And I just think that's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous for the 2 camps with the most KP by far to say that they're not the strongest. I don't think that's honest. I mean, you can make an argument for why that's not the case, but at the end of the day, let's just keep this simple. Who has the most KP? Who are the former Osiris League champions? Who has the most whales? That's the strongest camp. Like it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. That's the strongest camp. And like, fine, that's fine. Just be honest about it. Don't piss on my head and tell me that it's raining.
Well, I may have threw a little gasoline on that because that wasn't intended for the masses to hear. But
no, but this is the story, Dan. Like, this is the story of this, which is like, some people are just more honest than others. Some people are politicians. And if you're a politician leader in this game, you play the game in a certain way. You structure things to like have KVKs go your way. You get those stars. You recruit more players because you won the last KVK. And there are just kingdoms in this game who play that way. They just play a politician game. And, you know, I'm not even saying 2975 is like the main culprit or the main kingdom doing that in this scenario, but like that's a part of the game, and I think that's a story that's worth telling. Is like, I mean, dude, just be like Dan, man. Just Dan came on here and was like, hey, you know what? We probably are the favorites in this KVK. Like, that's all we want. Just admit that you're the favorites.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, first off, I gotta say I'm glad the dust is settling, and it looks like we are going to proceed with the KVK because, uh, like I said, as I woke up this morning and things still weren't done. Jesus Christ, Josh, with the 20
Yo,
gifted
I got a chat
memberships.
in here. I got to try to grab one of these.
Holy shit, Josh! Thank you, my friend.
Nice friggin' bomb.
Damn. Damn. Thank you, Josh. Always coming in with some cool shit. Everyone, welcome to the Dirty Gang who got in here. I'm really curious of how this works too, because there was someone who dropped a bunch in my a couple streams ago, and there were some people that were chatting and still not picking up the membership. Interesting.
Yeah, no, I still haven't figured out how to like claim one of these memberships. But
yeah, I don't
anyway, it's weird, you know. Yeah, I'll subscribe on my own here.
But yeah, Josh, thank you, appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, look, I can say this. I'm glad the dust has settled. I'm glad that we are progressing with the KVK, because when I woke up and there was still no ally announcement, and then we go into having an ally announcement, and then I see Diplo drama, and then I see 2268 saying that they're not going to participate. Thank you, Brian, for joining the Dirty Gang. Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the therapy session.
Yeah, dirty therapy. My wife always told me that I should be a therapist, so I guess
you've got the voice for it, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, look, I'm glad that we're progressing, and I'm glad we're moving forward, and I guess at the end of the day, and this is probably going to be cliche, but I guess we'll see, right? I guess we'll see. You know, after all the data, is thrown around, and you're the strongest, I'm the strongest, you have the most KP, we're losing players, you're losing players, we're reshuffling this KVK. Like, let's be real, there was a lot of that. Like, there was a lot of everyone trying to defend their own rights and stuff. So I think the best way to put it is just we'll see, and we'll see in 12 days ish when Zone 5 opens, and we go head to head with you guys, and Fire is going to go head to head with Daybreak. If Daybreak decides to fight. But
no, they're not going to go head to head with Daybreak.
No, wait.
It's only going to be us fighting. The other two matchups are both allies. So.
Oh, Greenwood and Greenwood and Water. They're on the bottom. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, so what I do? Go ahead.
No, well, I'll just say this very quickly. Like, yeah, it's like you say, it's a long game. At the end of the day, one of the good things about ROK is that it's a long game, and so like, yeah, you guys are the favorites in this KVK, but we still have the right to fight and represent ourselves, and there's always more to the story than just like who wins the KVK, right? Like, kingdoms can perform well, kingdoms can perform bad, vibes can be good, vibes can be bad, and like winning and losing is not the only thing that matters. But anyway, I was sorry to distract from what you were saying.
No, you're good. Hunky, welcome. It's from what it sounds like, everything's kind of clearing up in 2268. We'll fight, although we're left to see if that's going to be true. Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of like, again, looking here, and I'm just trying to take a perspective if I was in Diplo, which I honestly like. I kind of have finally programmed myself out of it, but even like last KVK, I was like, I don't think I would have done that. I would have done this. And even as we were going through and just like looking at map planning and stuff and strategic things, I'm like, oh, this is good. I really like how we're doing this, or this isn't great, So like I'm honestly just kind of like trying to sit here and like kind of evaluate some of those matchups that you were talking about, and just really seeing if there was not saying that it was invalid, but seeing the validity of how we could have really had that fair KVK. Because so let me ask this: who I guess is the one camp that people didn't want to ally with? Who was like that one camp?
Daybreak. Daybreak is considered the weakest camp.
Daybreak is the weakest. Okay, yeah. That's what I was thinking too. But
there was also like genuine hesitation about Fire. Like I just think saying Fire is the strongest. I mean, these are my allies that I'm talking about now. Yeah, and like I have great respect for 2268, but there was also hesitancy about Fire and whether they're gonna like to what extent are they gonna show up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're the one kingdom that's not going to go on after this. All of the other kingdoms care about the future of the kingdom, but 2268 doesn't really have that like incentive. But anyway,
as Plato comes in, fire sucks.
Plato, yeah.
Okay, so if they, yes, and I would have also had those hesitations if I was in diplomacy. 2268, not on the greatest streaks, I should say. But one thing that always kind of like piqued my interest whenever I was doing Diplo or trying to figure out allies, or it was always population, right? And this may be a little uneducated of me, since we're kind of working with high A seeds now, and this is when I was working in 2581, we were, I don't know, B seeds, low A's. So, and this is, we were getting like 1 to 2 kingdoms per camp, I would like to say. Population is always a huge thing to me. Like, if you have more players, like, you're always going to be an advantage, because also too, and the domain system kind of makes it a little bit tricky, but you have more players in 1394. That many more players have farm accounts that you can now just sit and feed structures. So which is the meta that we're in currently too, as Lilith is trying to pry us away from it. That I didn't really even see the potential of until I came to 2975, because I never really fought with my farms before. I've just always been my main account fighter, but I was doing a lot of filling from my farm accounts, and I was like, man, this is crazy. Like, and there's obviously a lot of other top tier kingdoms that are doing this. So the population always was one that kind of would make me a little bit more inclined to lean towards allying with someone like a fire camp, because if I'm looking at it, so if I'm looking at, I'm taking myself out of 2975, right? And I'm, let's say, water camp or whatever. If I'm looking at fire and earth, I honestly, and this is, again, without me being biased, right? So obviously 2975 has 40, 100 million power plus players. 2268 has 17, and then 13. Where the hell are they? They have 7. Holy shit, they have 7.
I mean, that's not bad. Actually, that's all right, though, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, 25.
I mean, we have 100 million power players who are dead weight. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, yeah.
I mean, like, we have 100 million power players who absolutely will not be maxing Crystal Tech.
Yes, yeah. But like that's something for me. Like, as I'm doing Diplo, I'm like looking at it and I'm like, man, I honestly, it would be tough, right? Because obviously you're looking at almost like a 1093 and 960 situation. Do I want to go with the spenders, or do I want to go with the population? So like that would be very hard for me. And then just looking at like the rest of the breakdown in terms of power, I think you alluded to it, and I don't want to take you word for word, but 486 and 1770 do look like the strongest camp, right or wrong?
I think you could say that we're the strongest camp. Yeah.
Okay.
Not by a lot, but I think you could say that we're the strongest camp. Yeah, definitely.
So we got, okay, so as I'm kind of organizing this in my head from, again, Dirty Dan, Diplo, non-2975 Dirty Dan, we have strongest camp in general is wind. We have fire with the most population of players. And then you have 2748, which is probably next beefiest. Let me look at these numbers again. That is also true, Hunky. Yeah, there's definitely players for us as well who are 100 million who don't max. Let me just look here. 2748 listed at 19.3. Let me just pull this back up on the screen so people can see.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a different visual that shows like the power better. Let me get that to you.
See, it's tough here even too, though, because you say, or actually no, never mind, because you guys are 20 billion here and 486 is listed at 15.8. Where's 3236 in all of this? I don't even know where they are. 32. Why are they on this list? 27. This is more kingdoms than we need, I think. Yes. Send you the Fleisch made map as well. 13.
Yeah, I saw the there's like Fleisch based data and then there's like different data.
So 13.
Okay, that's a good one. I mean, I don't know if it's accurate, but
okay, so if I'm looking at this, yeah, I mean that's the whole thing too, is like whose data is accurate. And that was always one thing for me too. Like this honestly was one of the reasons for me stepping away from leadership, is because there was a KVK where everyone was bitching about which software they use for like tracking data. And I was like, I can't do this. there's way too many variables to figure out rewards. I use StatMaster. I use Rockboard. You know, oh no, StatMaster is more accurate than Rockboard, and too much. Just it's way too much. This is what I mean, and this is what me and Ray have touched on. We as people in leadership, as people who dedicate so much time for this game, and you've expressed the frustrations of kind of being the underdog, and we need ways to see more accurate data. It has to be a thing to make us, because at the end of the day, Lilith is giving us a pool of kingdoms, but then it's the players who are deciding these matchups, right? So I think if we had a little bit more accurate data, it would help to make the KVKs a little bit more balanced when it came to, you know, picking allies and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think the domain system can help that, right? Because once we pick all the players for a domain, then either Lilith can give us the data, or we can figure it out ourselves and say, these are the players that were picked for this KVK. This is the KP that matters.
Yes.
And this is the power that matters. And one of the things I wondered about this one is that, you know, there are 3 kingdoms here who are like a domain. 2268, your kingdom, and 2748. You guys all qualified for the domain system, which means that on some level you were able to pick the players you bring in. And I wonder how much of an advantage that is, because, you know, you maybe didn't have to bring, I don't know if you had to bring in 900 people, or if you could have potentially brought in like 750 people, like only bring in your 750 active cities.
Yeah.
In which case, like, your power would be like much like cleaner and tighter than like ours would be, right?
True.
Because we had to bring everybody. Like, wherever you're looking at our power and whatever you're looking at our KP, you're looking at all the KP in our farm alliances. You're looking at all the power of people that we zeroed, but they still have 50 million power, you know? So I do wonder if the domains factored in here at all. I actually don't know. It's a very good point about data. It's a very good point that there's like different data. But my thing with that is like, why don't we just simplify it then? Why don't we like look at the KP? You make a good point about power. Like, you do make a good point about power, and like power being important, and, you know, there are certain mechanics in the game where power is more important than on other maps. But I just think that that just like complicates it so much, where it's like we got to look at KP, and we got to look at power, and we got to look at the number of whales. We got to be like, which of these whales are buying Crystal Tech, which of them aren't.
Yeah.
It gets like, you know what I mean? It gets really complicated. And at that point, you can just be dishonest, right? Like, at that point, there's really like an easy avenue for anybody to be dishonest and, you know, rig the KVK in their favor, but then state that it's actually fair because of this statistic or that statistic.
Yeah.
And like, you know, it's like, again, like, that's why I really appreciate being able to come on here, because we can have like a long form discussion about this. We can discuss not only the actual issue here, and maybe I can express my gripes, but we can also like talk about the global issues. But yeah, there's like an opportunity to be dishonest with this many stats.
Yes, no, I agree. It just always kind of going back onto the domain. Like, I just don't understand why like every kingdom just can't have the domain system. Like, and I think their Lilith is working towards that. And I think here, as we're probably the first round after the edit. We're one of the first rounds. So again, I think that there's going to be more adjustments to this domain system. And I think, again, it's just like you said, there was just so much that was involved in terms of like numbers and data and power. But I mean, kind of looking at it from this perspective now, and then kind of going back to what would I do in terms of the Diplo. I really do think that the right versus left probably would have been the best. It wouldn't have been best in terms of fighting, but Fire and Daybreak aren't going to be fighting anyway. It's just us that would be losing out on it. But from the discussions, 2975 did say that they're okay with not fighting in Zone 5. So yeah, it's very muddied. Look, I've enjoyed my time in 2975. I came here for a specific reason, is to get KVKs like this, because when I was in 2581, I just wasn't getting the big KVKs that I wanted. Whereas these past two KVKs have delivered that in spades. But there's definitely some things where I'm like, I would probably do a little bit different if I'm being completely honest. But that's just, again, I'm just a pleb here. That's just my opinion. So I'm really just in a position where you point me in the direction to go fight, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really nice position to be in. I'm envious. I'm envious of that position, and as much as I do get upset about stuff like this, you just have to like accept it and be like, I have. There's a lot of players in our kingdom that are just like you. They want to get pointed in the right. It's fun for them to get pointed in the right direction and have a good fight. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're gonna do, right? We're gonna fight in Zone 5. I mean, at this point, there's probably like some real like a bit of a grudge match developing between our two groups, and so I'm sure you guys are going to show up, and that will be a very good fight. In it's like a 1v1 camp versus camp, and I mean, yeah, it's like these things happen all the time, right? Like there's so many dramas, right? Like our campmate has had. If you Google, like if you search 1486 on the Facebook group, you're going to see some stuff. So, I mean, this stuff happens all the time, and I wish it didn't happen more, but I guess we're getting used to it, right? Because this happened last night. This popped up last night, and we're already starting to chill out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, for us, it's good content too. For us, all the content created. I mean, look, so I'm happy again that like you kind of just alluded to, like we're all kind of like calming down a little bit. Although there's this definitely like little grudge match forming, but I'm happy now that we can kind of just proceed forward. And my initial thoughts when I actually reached out to you a few days ago, I was like, yo, we're in the same KVK. So now this can kind of reform itself, I hope, to just be, hey, like to the community, hey, this is a content creator throwdown. Like we have like probably close to 10 content creators in this KVK, which is pretty dope. And I mean, I guess it's not unheard of if you're ever fighting 2268, because there's like 5 of them. There's like 5 of them over there. But at least, like, again, from my content creator's perspective, I'm just happy that we can kind of now coin this as like a content creator KVK, and I think it's good for all of the content creators that are going to be a part of this. And kind of what I touched on, that the drama that's building up is definitely pretty good content for us, and I'm sure there's going to be more drama that's going to come down the pipeline for sure. Just definitely, it's just the nature of Rise of Kingdoms at this point.
It's like so they just added threads to the Lost Kingdom chat, right? So it's no longer like normal LKC, it's like threads instead.
Oh yes, yeah.
So we're gonna put it through its paces, right? We're gonna like do a stress test of threads immediately in this one, because I don't think the drama is gonna stop, because I don't think your leadership is ever going to admit that like you guys are big favorites here. So I think it's going to just continue. You guys are going to keep saying this is fair and we're owning you, and we're going to keep saying y'all rigged it, and it's just going to go back and forth the whole time. And I was thinking that I was thinking about the content creator thing too, because I think it's great when like content creators are in the same KVK and like we can talk about like pretty high level issues in Rise of Kingdoms because we just fought,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt bad that in the last KVK I never got an opportunity to do that with Plato or Bus Driver or whoever from 2268 because we could have had good conversations about that war as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I think it would be cool if we do more of these, add some more people in as well.
Oh
And
yeah, we can do like a whole periodically or even at the very least just go in at the end and just we could do a Plato pod. We can all jump on and discuss the kind of what went down as a KVK progressed. That would be nice.
yeah, definitely. That's when it's all very fresh. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can't remember if you did stuff like that in the past, but I remember thinking I just remember thinking this is something I could do with Dan for sure. Like we're in the same KVK and we talk about what happened afterwards. You used to do like good podcasts about leadership and stuff.
Yeah, I did a few when I was king, and I did this whole King's Corner podcast. It only lasted a few episodes because I just realized that it just wasn't something that I wanted to do every week. I might bring some. I was thinking about it. I might bring something back maybe once a month or maybe bi-weekly, but yeah, it was just. But yes, I did do something like that. But yeah, I think it'd be really cool for all of us to kind of get on and kind of just shoot the shit and kind of be transparent a little bit. And I'm sure even to for those who don't know, and I've already been told that, and Brian, you might not know this. There's a whole video going around that I haven't finished yet. There's a whole video going around with all the Diplo stuff. So
oh really?
It's out there. It's out there. I'm halfway through it right now, and I wasn't able to gather much from it. And a lot of what I've talked on today is mainly what I've seen on Facebook, because the stuff that I've been kind of gathering from the YouTube video has been like a little on and off. But there's a video floating around that probably will surface at some point that has, like, from what I've seen of it, a large majority of the entire Diplo talks. So maybe
you're making the video or somebody else's?
No. It's out there. No, it's out there. Just saying.
It's out there. Interesting. I had no idea.
It's out there in the world. Yeah, I'm gonna finish it after the stream, and then probably as we continue on with these KVK streams, I'll start to divulge some of that stuff or just what I'm kind of breaking down. But Skitty, not just yet. I was told I can kind of talk about it, but I'm gonna wait. So I'll double check with you. But yeah, it's pretty much all of it's everything that you guys were talking about. So and I don't know if it's edited or not, but it doesn't look like it. It looks pretty straightforward. It's just scrolling down the chat. But yeah, so I just wanted to touch on that real quick to maybe add a little bit more spice to it. Wait, why is Ray sending me domain power?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. For me, when these allies got announced, I basically was already wrote the thumbnail of pathetic coward kingdoms rigged KVK in their favor, all caps, and I was basically gonna get on and be like, I invite any content creator to debate me live. I'll go on your channel, and I was gonna call out every content creator from all these kingdoms, call out the English speaking leader of 27 or the English speaking officer in 2748. I'll invite him on, everybody, and I was just gonna torch the earth. I was just gonna torch the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think doing it with you in a long form way is way better than that, right? It's just way better.
Yeah, I mean, look, we can kind of get in and kind of vent some of the stuff out. That's kind of like you were alluding to, kind of just building up, and you kind of just want to get out of the system. But then I think, and then another thing you touched on is we kind of get into more of these constructive conversations, right? Because after we kind of clear the air and okay, well, we wanted, they want an easy KVK. They're going for the easy win, blah blah blah. The narrative set. Let's leave it at that. I guess is and we don't have to leave it at that. We can keep coming back to it however we want. But just saying is that with this KVK right now, the narrative set, right? You can ask anyone from one side or one side the other. They're all going to have their own narratives to it. But I just really like how it turns into a constructive conversation and how things need to become better within the game to give us, and not that it's ever going to be 100% fair or even, because that's where human element comes in, and you have instances like this where you'll hardlock allies still, even if you have all the data in the world available to you. But yeah, I mean, at least we can probably hope to go in those directions through some of these constructive talks with content creators and stuff.
Yeah, and the other reason that I'm glad I'm not torching the earth is because we have to work with all these kingdoms in the future.
Yes,
this is just one KVK,
mm-hmm.
and at this point, we're not the biggest kingdoms in the game, but we're getting pretty close. And so we're going to all cross paths again. Like I said, this is the third KVK in a row we've had with 1824. This is our first time matching up with 2975 and 2748. These are two younger kingdoms, two, Vietnamese-led kingdoms. The Vietnamese community in this game is very, very strong at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't look at the exact list, but I would estimate that probably something like 5 out of the top 10 strongest kingdoms in the game are Vietnamese kingdoms. And so, you have to be constructive. You have to work with people, because who knows what's going to happen in the future. And, as a leader of my kingdom, I just can't make everyone mad at me and then put us in a position where we're just going to have bad matchups over and over again. And we're that kingdom that everyone wants to go up against. I think 1228 a long time ago got in that position where everyone wanted to fight against 1228, and then they would just go into these big KVKs and they would just be the underdog. They were just the unliked kingdom,
Mm-hmm.
and they were the underdogs. And so, that was also a motivation to let's just talk with Dan about this. Let's, let's be honest, but let's, do it on his channel, and maybe my mic is not quite as strong as it'll be on my own channel, and let's make our points if anybody wants to get the points, but at the same time, I'm being a little political as well,
You make a great point, though. I mean, and that was always the thing with betrayals and stuff. You have to your name carries, not your name, but the kingdom number carries a lot of weight, right? People remember shit. It's a great point to make that. Yeah, I mean, and look, 2975 might get burned by this down the road. We can run into you guys down the line and say, hey, you want to ally? Be like, no, well, remember when you guys wanted that really unfair KVK where you spanked us? If this is what happens, no, we don't want to ally with you. So totally good point, and it might come back to burn them. I don't want to say us, but them.
It might and it might not, right? Because in this game, power is power. As Cersei Lannister said, power is power, and so there are powerful figures involved in this KVK. There are powerful relationships, and I mean, listen, I'm the kind of guy I'll ally with anybody if I think it's going to improve my chances of winning.
Mm-hmm.
Now we might have some leaders in our kingdom who are more principled than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who are more idealistic. But for me, and certainly players can pressure certain alliance diplomatic rejections, right?
Absolutely.
With this KVK, I think a number of our leaders were fine allying with water, but it was the player base who really wanted to fight against water. And some leaders, and some leaders definitely wanted to also.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, but me, just speaking for myself personally, hey, if you're strong, I don't care what you've done in the past. If you're gonna help us, if you're gonna help me win, I'll give you my number.
There you go. Yeah. Different takes. Like I said, human element. There's a lot of this stuff too that's just we could get everything all perfect and daisies and roses at some point down the line, and we can have the best matchmaking system ever. But at the end of the day, there's still human element that we just can't account for. Have any other additional points on this? Not to make it sound like we're wrapping up at all. And if you guys have anything too that you want to kind of throw in here on this discussion, I know Skitty's kind of been vocal. I haven't been able to read all the messages, so I apologize. But Any other further thoughts on this, Bry?
I don't think so. I think we had a good conversation about it. I got to get some things off my chest. You got to make some very good points, and hopefully we brought the temperature down in the room.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this, like you said, there is a very human element to this game, and I think part of what needed to happen here is someone just had to sort of be the mature adult in the room. And not to say that we necessarily are the mature adults, but like, you know, moments before our call, you know, White Castle and Peacemaker had like a really good conversation, and there were other conversations in the background, like, yeah, let's fight, let's have a good KVK, let's like do all this stuff, and you know, you wish that maybe someone had done that earlier on, but let's just do it now, right? Let's not be let's try to be respectful of each other. Let's have a good fight. I've said what I have to say. If people want to like see what I feel about this, they can watch this stream. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go hammer it much more than this.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that's what you do, right? You try to be the bigger person, and you know, in a game like this that's actually intense, I do think we can learn some stuff about ourselves.
True.
Different people have different things to learn, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, in my case, it's like just talk to people, reach out to people instead of making an angry video. Message Dan instead, and get on his stream and talk about it there. You know, like
There you go.
that's a good way to do it. So
Dirty Dan therapy sessions are now available, people. So
yeah, get Plato on here next. We still haven't heard. The thing is, we still haven't heard from 2268, right? Like this is just me.
I honestly was like, because I'm pretty good friends with Plato and Black Panther. Like I've met up with those guys in real life, and Black Panther is like 2 towns away from me, which is crazy. I was actually surprised he didn't hop on. I was expecting some fieriness to come over, but yeah, I got sent this, and this was one of the other pictures that I saw floating around too. So this was a bunch of the different scenarios that got proposed. So 2268's proposal was fire, wind, and greenwood versus earth, daybreak, and water. So let me just pull up this real quick too. So
Fire, wind, wood.
Fire, wind, greenwood.
Yeah, that's the matchup that I thought was best, because in that matchup everyone fights in the first zone.
This is true, but again, the one thing I would, just from seeing it, because I mean this is second Alliance Invictus, technically second, because I did a little bit in 2581 with my mini account that's there and just helping them fill flags. But like in that bottom zone, if you're sandwiched, it really sucks. Like you're most...
Well, they're not sandwiched though. It's a 2v2. It's a 2v2.
Wait, Earth.
I think that's a really good. I think that data,
No, but...
which I think actually I think someone from your side showed this data, but I just think that first proposal shows a pretty fair matchup. Yes,
I would say
we have the edge.
I would say yes in terms of numbers, but what my point is here on the Alliance Invictus map is, yes, it's still 2v2, but Greenwood and Wind are going to go and sandwich in water. That's an entire section of pass that you're going to lose right off the bat. Like, you know, we
might get one pass from them. I mean,
that's
because they can fort over by daybreak.
Well, yes. You're still going to give one pass, right? So we're going to go to Alliance Invictus. Is there one going on right now? Yes. So you're gonna get one pass for sure, but
yeah.
So this is the wall that divides. So Greenwood's here, water's here, wind is here. Wind is going to close in on water here, which that eliminates this pass from water. So that means that right off the jump, and look, you can if you're really good, you can maybe hold on to this pass, but that's a really tough task to ask when you have 2 territories barreling down on you. And I don't think it's reasonable that someone can hold out there. Because we saw it when I was in 2581. They were in the same position. They were here and they got sandwiched from daybreak and water, and they had to jump over here into the the safe space of wind and enter through this pass here. So with that scenario, you're already kind of maybe, and again, this is potential, but in my opinion, very strong. You're already eliminating one pass that you're coming out of, which I'm gonna flip.
So, okay. I have not played Alliance Invictus, but I feel like if you're the first team to take the pass into Zone 6, and you are able to drop a fort at those passes, then I think you have a legitimate shot of holding it for 3 days, right?
Yeah.
And then so I mean, that's one point. The other point is if you just look at the stats of that, the stats are pretty even, and it's like, okay, we have the advantage. I admit that in that matchup we have the advantage, but it's a much smaller advantage than exists now. And like, newsflash to a kingdom like Water, like sometimes you have to be the underdog in a KVK, right? Because I think that first proposal was rejected by probably both Earth and Water. I think someone in your chat even said that. Okay. But it's like, sometimes you have to be the friggin' underdog. Like, just accept it, okay?
Yeah.
Like, if it's the fairest matchup and you're like the slight underdog, then the correct thing to do, in my opinion, is to just take the matchup, okay? It's not that big of a deal. Somehow, sometimes you're like the underdog, and guess what? Sometimes you actually win as an underdog, and that like is a really good feeling. So anyway, that's my point. I think I think this graph is like quite good. I haven't actually gone through this, but I think you would see a bunch of these where like there's a fairer matchup than what we have now. Where's the matchup we have now on this? It's the second one, right? No. It's Fire is the last one. Scenario 4, Fire, Daybreak, Wind. Yeah, I mean that has the highest
kill point differential.
Power. It has the highest power difference and the highest and the highest kill point difference, or not the highest kill point difference. No. The second highest.
Yeah, second highest.
Or third highest, actually. Yeah, so I mean, I guess on paper that one's like not. I mean, if these numbers are correct, I would say that the numbers wise, these matchups look roughly the same. Obviously, the third scenario is the fairest: Fire, Wind, Water.
And that's the one I think you proposed, right? Fire, Wind, Water versus Earth, Daybreak.
We proposed all three of the first. We proposed all three of the first 3 scenarios. We were fine with all 3 of these, and we ended up with number 4.
I think so. As I was looking through this, and even as we were having our discussion, I think actually I did think in my mind as well that scenario 3 was the best, right? Because it still gives, right? Because we already called out that Daybreak is the weakest. And if you're calling out that Earth and Greenwood are the strongest, then they should get the weakest camp. They should get the weakest remaining camp. But then I think again the I guess the tension between Water and Fire kind of broke that down.
Richard, I don't think we rejected that. I don't think we rejected that scenario. Fire might have rejected it, but we did not reject it. I mean, we certainly wouldn't have rejected it before you guys allied and didn't tell anybody, right? Like, at a certain point, if like all that's left is scenario 3 and scenario 4, Richard, we would have accepted scenario 3. We tried to make scenario 3 happen after you guys finalized scenario 4. Like we were just rushing to make that happen because that would be a little bit more fair. So I just don't think it's honest to say that 770 rejected that matchup. I'm not in Diplo, but like, I just don't think we rejected that matchup. Maybe Fire did. I don't know. But I mean, yeah, number 3 looks fair, and
then so if number 3 is probably the fairest, and then scenario 4, which is what we have now, isn't as bad as we thought it was. If these numbers are accurate, is what we're kind of leaning towards, in a way.
Yeah, I don't know if I think this is something from. Oh, so listen, I will say this about this image, which I believe Richard is probably the person who posted this. RR5 did respond to this image with his own stats and say that this was misleading.
Okay, it's another way.
So yeah, he like what Eddie Nava wrote was, you have access to this more accurate representation, and then Eddie kind of made like a long-winded statement, but Addy did put our leadership did push back on this data, but even if we just take this data for what it is, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's over at this point. Like, what are you gonna do?
I mean, it's all set in stone. Yeah, we're just purely speculating now, Chad. I was honestly, I was trying to, again, because as someone in former leadership, as much as I do not envy you guys for what you do to make the game fun for us like normal players. I definitely still have an intrigue on how these things break down and how they work, and kind of take my perspective and try to spin it for my content and the style of the content that I try to put out. But looking at this as a former king and Diplo planner, whatever you want to title it, scenario 3 is definitely the fairest, and I think that's probably an argument that I would have made too. Like, look, if y'all are claiming that Earth, us, and Greenwood are the strongest, then we'll take the weaker camp, the weakest camp, I should say, and just call it at that. That's honestly that is definitely the scenario that I would have went to go roll with, and then that way too, everyone's getting fights, everyone's getting zone 5 fights. Hell yeah, and that's a win
in scenario 3.
Scenario 3, yeah. Because
that's true. That is true. That is true. Yeah.
And
I think it was a diplomatic breakdown that scenario 3 did not work out. And I mean, we may have. I know it wasn't our. I know we wanted scenario 1 and 2. That was like our original position.
Mm-hmm.
But it is unfortunate that we did not ultimately land on scenario 3. But the thing is, like, it was a diplomatic breakdown because like fire and water were just like going at each other hard. And I will be honest, we would have preferred to fight water. We were looking to fight water. So, it's too bad we didn't get on scenario 3.
I think, and I can't speak for 1770 on this, but I can. What I was reading a little bit, and even 1394 either. To be honest, from what I was reading, it was a lot coming from Fire and Earth, of both talking their own kingdoms down and saying, "Hey, we're not as strong as you think we are."
Yes.
And it was just so much of that was just like, okay, well, if you're gonna say you're not as strong as you are, and we're gonna say we're not as strong as we are, well, then where are we at? Like that whole thing right there is like what kind of stemmed all of this. And look, both kingdoms are, I don't want to say both kingdoms aren't in great places. I mean, 2068 hasn't won a KVK in a really long time, and 2975 probably made a really bad decision last KVK, which is why we lost probably 40 players to 2934, which is kind of our rivals a little bit, which was
who we all dodged. We all dodged 2934 this top.
well, 2934 dodged us last KVK, so
okay.
I don't even know if that's valid. That's just something I think that Hunky had said before, who's Hunky's in my kingdom. So but I mean, I don't even know if that's valid, but I saw that flying around at some point too. But yeah, I mean, we lost like 30 players to 2934 because we did a really bad Diplo boo-boo and wanted to go 1 versus 14 in Kingsland, which, as entertaining as that was a terrible decision. But it also, at the same time, the way that I looked at it is kind of weeds out the weak, and the people who say, "Oh, I don't want this intensive fighting. I got to leave. I got to get out of here." But now they're going to chase gold chests. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, first, I just want to quickly say that Skitty said after scenario 3 got told, the insults started throwing from both sides, mostly 1824 and 2268, and that broke down. I think that's very accurate. I think you can tell that Skitty was in Diplo chat, and a lot of what Skitty has said does correlate with what I've heard from Adi Navo. And so that's the first thing. But then I also wanted to respond to what you said about how you guys lost a bunch of players in the last KVK. It's like, that's why all this stuff happens. Like, for people who are on the outside looking in and wondering like why we're bickering about all this stuff and like like why any of this even matters, right? It's because like when you win KVKs, you bring it, you gain players, and when you lose KVKs, you lose players. Like in many cases, you lose like really good players.
Yeah.
And if you lose a couple KVKs in a row and you lose like 2 groups of good players in a row, all of a sudden your kingdom is like dead, So the stakes are pretty high for these things. And that is why, like, so much goes into this, and like everyone is like trying to like push their own edge as much as they possibly can. So that and anyway, that's why this matters, is because like you guys made a diplomatic mistake last KVK, and this game is complicated enough now where it's like, okay, are they making another diplomatic mistake now? Like, are is taking sort of like the, like a non-ideal matchup here, and then saying that like you're not, saying the other team has the strongest camps, in an alliance mail. Is that the right Diplo either, or are you, taking a risk with your own player base even if you win? I mean, these are all like very complicated questions. Like, it's the same thing for us to an extent, but I mean, I don't know. I think we kind of just like played this pretty solidly. Like, we should have worked on scenario 3 a little bit more. We shouldn't have rejected scenario 3, but I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think we're like screwing our players in any sort of way. We're just like gonna fight anyway. And I mean, we could have handled diplomacy better, actually, also. So
yeah,
it's on us.
I think that and like Skitty said, once scenario 3 happened, and then once you start having insults, that's kind of when someone's got to be like, hey, let's take a break. Let's come back, because maybe if that happens, then, and look, this is now me, a normal player. I'm pointing the finger at all of you. You guys fucked that up from starting to get nasty with each other, because we could have had a really good KVK with scenario 3. But no, you're right. And I even, again, as a regular player in 2975, I was watching their what they were going to do in this Diplo as well, because if they didn't do it right, in my head, I'm like, I'm leaving. Like, they're not, yes, they're a good fighting kingdom, but what does that matter when you can't get diplomacy right? I also want to be in a kingdom that also like represents themselves well. Like, I don't want to be in the backstabbing kingdoms and all that stuff. So that's definitely something that as a normal player, and maybe I'm a little bit more in tune with it because it's something that I was in, but I'm definitely been paying attention to what 2975 has been doing diplomacy wise, and if it's stuff that I don't like, then I'll just leave. But I mean, at least for right now, we still have a KVK, so hopefully things don't start taking a turn for the worst, and everyone can kind of keep an even keel head as we kind of get into this KVK.
I'm starting to get psyched for it, honestly. I'm starting to get psyched for it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You've almost like sold me on the idea that like maybe it's a little fairer than I thought it was. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm letting you snow me or what, but I'm just like,
I mean, look,
yeah, let's actually do it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like the two kingdoms are younger, right? Like 2975 and 2748. You guys like are like younger kingdoms, so like a little bit less proven in that sense. I mean, obviously you've won Osiris League, so that shows like a very high degree of competence. But
I mean, look, we can go in and break down right now. So we have 83 and R3. We obviously have our R4s, but even look here, like 30 million power player. That's 100 million, and then we go in here. It probably doesn't take you long to get into the bottom portion. So 58 players. Let's say like we move these 8, and then there's the 50 that we're missing. But I don't want to say missing, but they're smaller accounts, and then you start getting into it, and you can start noticing all the farms. So we're, like I said before, we're not a full 150, but yeah, I mean, the numbers are what the numbers are. I think at the end of the day, they're always going to be that way, and I think that people, if there's going to be a KVK that proves it, let it be this one, just for my sake and my stance. But population really means something in this game, so we'll see if that does come to fruition. If Fire Camp gives us a hard time in Zone 7, I'll gladly come on. And I'm not like I'm not like you, Brian. I'm not very straightforward. I'm not that much of a straight shooter, but I'll come on and say I told you so. That, and not you, not you specifically, but everyone. Yeah. Like, I told you so. That the numbers mean a little bit more, and it's not all about the power. But yeah, we'll see. I think it's going to be At least for us, especially, it's gonna be good KVK. We're gonna have 2 zones worth of fighting. So fuck it. We're gonna get some good fighting, Brian.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Two, maybe three zones.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, you have to actually go and do the fights, right? Like, we're trying to predict what's going to happen beforehand, but I mean, sometimes sometimes the predictions are completely wrong. A lot of crazy things can happen in Rise of Kingdoms Wars.
Mm-hmm.
But at other times the predictions are right on, right? I mean, like the 1093 1960 KVK, the most recent one. I mean, that basically went exactly as people expected. Well, it mostly went as people expected, which is that, like 1093 was going to play very well, but ultimately 960's camp was just going to be too powerful and overwhelm them.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there were a few surprises. Number one, it was surprising that 188 underperformed in Kingsland. And it's also surprising that 1093 still holds like a big chunk of that map. I haven't checked it recently, but what I heard is that 1093 owns so much of that map that 960 is actually going to be shorted 2 conquest coins. Like they're going to get 2 less conquest coins than they would have gotten in a full takeover because 1093 is able to defend so much territory.
Damn. I didn't even think that map was still open, to be honest. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I felt like that KVK ended ages ago.
The fort wall in zone 6 is still, still up.
It's still there. Still up. Holy crap. That's insane.
So now I'm realizing that Eddie Novel bullshitted me when he said that this would be like, it would only be like 4 or 5 days of fighting. Because this thing is going on.
Yeah, I would say, and so you said you haven't played Alliance Invictus before, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah. So this zone is very unforgiving. So with you guys having water, so I would say from covering a few of these and also playing in them, you guys have the advantage going into zone 7 because you're closer to this pass than what water has to climb kind of up here, I think, in a way. Is the way that I was looking at it. But yeah, this zone is very unforgiving. So it really is about hunkering down. And you guys actually might even get some prolonged fighting in there too after kind of like the dust settles and whatnot. But this is going to be very interesting up here with us and Fire going against 3 alliances to. So, wait, hold on. Let me ask you, Skitty, how many active players? And I'm sorry if you've already said this before, but how many active players do you guys have in 1394? Because we've already figured out that Fire has they've said 80, so we'll go with 80. We're at about 100, and then Lefty also said, I mean they're a DC'd kingdom, so let's be real. In that prediction, we'll say we're probably around 200 capable fighting accounts. Yes. Because I mean, even if you're looking at it like from our perspective, I mean, if you want to say capable fighting accounts for us, I mean, there's you saw it. There's a nice handful of players who are like 50 million below. We have about a strong 80 here. Let's see.
I mean that is definitely low.
What's in our R3? We have a strong 83, right? And as we go down here, the bottom of 83 is a 73 million power, right? So, like, yeah. I mean, if you go down here, again, if you're really counting these as competent fighting accounts, I mean, these are all native players to my knowledge. Like, these guys are going to have 3 to 4 marches. Even more so for 3105. They're going to have 2 marches, maybe 3, maybe 4 for majority of their players. Whilst 1395, you guys are an older kingdom. You're gonna have more players with more marches, despite the power. It's just a name of the game of time.
Yeah, it's really interesting, like how much. I'm reading Skitty in chat, and he's describing what's happening in 1394 and how they brought in like 2 alliances of players from a younger kingdom, which to me means you have a bunch of active people, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's impressive. To me, that makes 1394 sound stronger than I thought they were on paper. I thought they were just like a dead Imperium. I didn't think about it too hard, but I was like, oh, they're just they're one of the remaining two alliance kingdoms who hasn't kicked anybody out, and so they're just this like two alliance farming Imperium, you know. But what Skitty's saying is they're an Imperium because they brought in like a bunch of younger players, and so that's like interesting. Like, that's cool. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that one of my allies is stronger than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else brought up pilots in the chat, which pilots don't get factored into power calculations at all. Pilots don't get factored. I mean, they get factored into KP, and that's why KP is so important.
Yeah.
Because pilots do get factored into KP.
Yeah.
And
true.
So it's really interesting to actually go through this with you and be like, yeah, there's like a lot that even though we've presented people with like 3 different versions of the stats, even then there's like a lot that we don't understand. Like, my understanding of 2975 is like way different than when I looked at the stats, where you're saying that you've got like 100 active accounts and you had like 30 people migrate out. I mean, like, that's that didn't show up when I looked at 2975 originally either. When I looked at 2975, I saw a trillion KP.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a trillion KP and 4 more Osiris League champions, which is a sign of a lot of strength. That is a sign of a lot of strength, but I can understand maybe why you guys are a little nervous if you lost like 30 people and then did no skip. Although that's on you guys for doing no skip.
Yeah,
like,
that is. Yeah,
I mean,
that was one of the good things. Like, I saw is like the comeback to 2975 was like, yeah, that's a good one. No, that's on us. Like, we can't really use that discussion, or that argument. But yeah, I mean, like, just kind of like as you're alluding to, there's just so much that goes into this stuff. And as you kind of peel back the layers a little bit more, I think it starts to look like it. And again, I think a lot of this stems from people just trying to downplay how much they could actually do. Whereas, and there's definitely some kind of truth to it too, obviously, from everyone's perspective. But I'm just going in here real quick. I just want to try and point out, not that it matters, but just to show you like who we lost. And I'm curious to see who the other 5 people that are leaving. I really hope that they're not like, because we have some really key players who like either garrison captains or whatnot, but we have some really, really key players that I kind of don't want to lose here.
You have Chisel Farm? Nice.
This is 2934. I guess he moved his account there.
Oh, okay.
Let me just see if I can find some of these old 2975 guys. MJH is one of them, who's amazing with his farms. He's got like 20 farms. He was constantly filling with them. There's another guy, I think Meeks is in here. He was another one who's really good with his farms. And again, too, like to that point, VN Henry is another guy we lost. To that point, too, with 1394, with having so many more accounts now, just think about how many more farm accounts they're going to have to just stuff into, situations like in that Zone 7 when we're most likely going to be putting up fort walls, So yeah, I mean, this is just Goldfish, I think, is another one.
Hulky actually migrated to 2934 also. Hulky's a whale that I'm associated with.
Okay.
And we were hoping to get him in 1770, but he decided at the last minute to go to 2934 instead. So yeah, I mean, so the other story that's happening here is that all of us, like all the kingdoms that are bickering now, we all sort of did the smart thing and figured out where 2934 was registering. Yeah. And then we all went to Alliance Invictus instead.
Mm-hmm.
But like 2293 didn't get the memo. And so, SW's new kingdom now has to probably fight against 2934.
Yeah.
So,
which is the arguably one of the new big players in the name of, you know, those top Imperiums and whatnot. So yeah, GG's to them and Sasuke. Have fun, Sasuke. Get your infantry ready.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a good fight, honestly. I mean, 2293 is due for a good fight, um, and 2934, having added all these new players, you also want to see them get tested right off the bat too, because you know, listen, kingdoms have big recruiting seasons. They get really big, the hype around them builds, but they have to prove it. Like if you do not deliver, if you have big recruiting, then you do not deliver, people will simply leave.
Yeah.
And again, you know, that's like the high stakes of this stuff, man. It's high stakes. Like if you don't deliver, your kingdom dies. So I think that's a part of what's happening in our KVK, right? We're like a bunch of kingdoms that are on the cusp of being like part of the new elite, you know, like now that everyone's just a one alliance kingdom, like a group like ours that like never, we were just like a mid A kingdom that was happy to be a mid A kingdom, right? And now all of a sudden it's like we're in the mix with some of these stronger kingdoms.
Yeah.
I mean, we could never compete with like 2377 or not like 960. They're on a whole nother level, right? But but what's the level below that? What's the second tier? And I think in our KVK, there's a bunch of kingdoms that like want to be on that second tier, or like just got to the second tier and we're like not sure if we can stay. And you know, we almost acted like the big Imperiums, right? Because like the big Imperiums always have these long ass diplomacies, right?
Yes,
the big Imperiums have all these like ridiculous diplomacies over and over again, and we were like, you know, we're like emulating our parents once we got in the spot and doing the same thing.
No, it's true. Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly as you say. You know, there's a lot riding on this, because not only are some of our games getting pushed up into that like upper echelon tier, but there's also like 2975, 2268, and I don't know what's going on with 2268. Heard that they're moving after this KVK regardless. Anyway, I don't really know what's going on over there, but there's a couple kingdoms within this, and unfortunately are probably the top strongest based on the map position. I'm not even going to bring up powers or numbers, or just based on the position of the map. Lilith usually puts the top strongest kingdoms in that position to go 1v1 versus each other. And honestly, it's almost like whoever loses on the top side is probably going to lose to what you alluded to. They're going to lose a huge chunk of players, because 2975 would be 2 in a row and 2268 would be a lot in a row. So
yeah, I mean, it's but like if you play good, I don't know. My thing is like if you play good and like the leaders prove to the players that they're good leaders, the players prove to the leaders that they're good players, and like you have a good team that you can accomplish stuff with. Like if you play good, I just don't think a loss is that big of a deal. That's been my experience.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I tried to express that when I was in leadership, and even whenever any matchups come out and whatnot, like all I ever want is I just want to fight, because I've said it before, like you can get screwed and just get into a farm KVK. Like getting into a KVK where you actually get a fight is a win in itself, and it sounds cheesy, but it's the truth, because I've been a part of farm KVKs and I almost quit the game because I didn't get to fight for almost like what it felt like 6 months. So the fact that we can even get a fight is enough in itself. You know, obviously everyone wants to win, but you know, at the end of the day, me personally, I just want good fights. Like I've missed out on Autalk rewards. I've missed out on, you know, not getting Zig and stars and all that stuff when I was in leadership. At the end of the day, I just want to fight. That's what this game, at the core, that's what this game is just getting some good fights.
Yeah. I mean, the more we talk about it, the more I think that we actually have like a very fair fight in Zone 5. You know, I actually feel pretty good about it. I feel pretty good about that fight, actually. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to it, and I'll see you out there.
Hell yeah. I just say one thing on that note, and we'll kind of start to wrap it up. I'll just say what I really like at 2975, and I've tried to make content on this, it's just really hard, but the building, the way that these guys build is very good. So I'm On
Well, hey, that's cool. That's good to hear. That's going to be Master Builder against Master Builder then, because I don't know if you know Addy's reputation, but Addy's he's pulled off some builds that have wowed the entire community, in my opinion. I mean,
Nice.
at the very least, he built that fort wall against 2268 in the last KVK, right? He built
Hmm.
the fort wall that it took them 10 days to get through. So
True. Yeah.
okay, that's interesting that you guys have really good builders too. That'll be
Yes.
our voice chat's going to be great then, because if you guys make a friggin' mistake, Addy's going to call it out and we're going to laugh about it. So
Yeah, I mean, just what I saw last KVK, because I used to do the planning and building in 2581, and I guess more of like a rudimentary approach. But there was some, like, a few times I was like, wow, I didn't think about that, and I was like, this is. But I also never had to build on a scale that 2975 had to do. Like last KVK when we were solo, in our own camp alone, but like we used like every shell possible. Like I don't, and not every shell possible. We use a majority of them, and I was just like, man, some of these, like, we're picking up here and continue to build here. I'm like, I would have never been able to do that, but I've never been exposed to that level of building, and I've always had great respect for people who do set up those fort walls, because like the smallest mistake means that the entire fort wall it means nothing. So to all those people who can build fort walls, it's very fun to see, and it'll be interesting to see in the zone 5, for sure.
yeah, definitely. Were you guys in Alliance Invictus last KVK? Because I did watch your stream when Zone 6 opened, and I remember that you guys like progressed across the zone very quickly. You built a bunch of advanced forts. But was that Alliance Invictus?
That was Alliance Invictus. Yeah, we were in the.
It was okay.
Yeah, we were fire camp, and I guess it's not always. I guess it's not always the case, because we pushed Earth around really easily. And I still to this day don't know if that was planned, that they weren't really trying to bring everything out against us, but that really left them at a not really detriment at the end of the day, because we still had to go one camp versus 3, which was one kingdom versus 14. But I mean, at that strength that we were at last KVK, we were able to hold 4 kingdoms in zone 5 and in zone 6. So we'll see what this zone provides for us, given that we've lost a few players, but we have 3105 now to kind of act as some of that reinforcement support.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're gonna soften you guys up for fire, and then you're gonna have like a very good fight with fire, So it will be interesting.
Definitely going to be interesting indeed. I'm excited to actually catch up on the rest of this Diplo stuff, and I might have some messages I might send to you a little bit later tonight. But I'm very curious.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to get through the rest of this video, and I'll reach out to the fine folks who sent it over to me and be like, so like, are you sure this is okay to kind of let out there? Because there's some. I mean, from what I've seen, there's a lot, but I just don't know how juicy it gets. So.
Oh, now I get it. Okay, you're making the video, but the footage is from somebody else.
Oh no, I'm not making any video. No, I won't do that. And even too, like, as I got sent it, they were like, oh, watch it before you go on stream. But I was like, I just don't want to reveal anything. Like, I don't feel that it's my place to reveal the stuff that's been going on in those Diplo chats. So I'm gonna keep it to myself for now, and I'll have discussions with my friends and obviously with you about it from anything I do see. But to summarize, for those who are just joining as we wrap up, there was just a lot of kind of like, oh, we're not as good as you think we are, and then tempers flared, and we had a really good scenario on our hands, which would have been, I don't think I still have the thingy up, which would have been this scenario 3, but we lost it. So as the regular player, speaking to one of the guys in leadership in this KVK, and speaking to all of you guys in leadership in Diplo, you messed it up by getting nasty with one another. So we could have had the best scenario here, which was scenario 3, but we're still going to get some good fights. We're going to have fights in zone 5 with our friend Brian here, and roughly 12 days, probably a little bit longer, like 14. So be sure to subscribe to his channel. There's tons of other content creators in here too to check out for some pretty good Alliance Invictus fighting. That is not what you guys need to be seeing. Yeah, I think we'll leave it at that. Any last words for chat, for the community, for Diplo, for anything on this, Bri?
Well, I echo what you said about Diplo. You guys screwed this up, but I will add, I'd still rather you guys do it than me. So we got to live with it, right?
Yeah.
I accept that you guys are better at it than me. So we're stuck with what we got, and we keep it moving.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. It was honestly, it was very fun, and thank you for reaching out to me, because otherwise I would have just been sitting here, trying to make some stuff up on my own. Really appreciate you, Brian. Chat. I don't think there's anyone to send you off to, as I was just checking. So we'll leave it at that. I might come back and stream tomorrow, some Marauders potentially. But yeah, hit that like button on the way out. Consider subscribing. Definitely subscribe to Brian, who also, by the way, I didn't mention, was a fellow Osiris League caster. So he had both of the newbies on here for you guys. So definitely some good ROK content, definitely some good insights, and maybe a roast stream, Hunky. Maybe this will be the one that we do. But yeah, for Brian, we're out, guys. Take care. Have a good one. Later. Peace.